Hi guys, welcome to another roster review by Glasshammer Gaming. Today we've got a really special guest, Archon Skari himself from SkaredCast, the channel over in Canada, which is worldwide, is coming on today, and he represented Team Canada at the World Team Championships with his Drukhari army. And that is what we're going to walk you through today, and I'm going to leave you with him, and he's going to tell you all about his list and how it all works.
Hello everyone, welcome to my list in review. Thank you Manny and the Glasshammer team for inviting me all the way to England, paying for my plane ticket, my hotel, and no, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to be talking about the list I took to the WTC, which was the only list of its kind there. And it was a coteries of the Homunculus Army of Renown. And I was using the Prophets of the Flesh. It was all Coven, except for a unit of Mandrakes, Drazar, and 2 units of Incubi, but it really gave a lot. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's start with what is in the list. The entire list is based around a single battalion detachment. I like using command points with this list, and there will be times where I would burn through 6 or 8 command points in a single battle round, so I wanted to make sure I started with a lot of them. Drazar is in the list. He cannot be the Warlord. He was there to provide 3 damage stuff. I have a Master Homunculus, who is the Warlord, with the Warlord trait that allows everything within 6 inches to get reroll 1s to hit if they're core, which is kind of like having an Archon, but in a Coven, which is really neat. And the Vexator Mask, which is really the only reason to take Prophets of the Flesh, as you lose your obsession in the Army of Renown. Now you do gain some cool stuff, but we'll talk about that as well after the army list. In the elite section, I have 3 units of 5 grotesques. 15 grotesques are really the meat and potatoes of this list. They do a lot of damage, they're very durable, they're faster than they seem, and they terrify people. And that's exactly what I needed. 2 units of 5 Incubi with a Clavex, with Demiclaves, and 6 Mandrakes to give me good use of getting some secondaries, bouncing around, and some mortal wounds in the shooting phase in a pinch, if I really needed it. As for the troop choice, I had 10 Hemoxites with an Ossifactor and Electrocorrosive Whip, 2 units of 10 Racks with an Electrocorrosive Whip and an Ossifactor, and then 3 units of 5 Racks, each with an Electrocorrosive Whip. The whips mean that one little guy in that unit can do quite a lot of damage, and that's really cool. And the Ossifactors in there give me some cheeky access to some fire and fades to move a lot further than my opponent thinks to in order to get objectives. In the fast attack slot, absolutely nothing. Then we have the heavy support slot. I had 2 single Talos. Individuals, double heat lance. The Gauntlet, the Talos Gauntlet for 3 damage as well. You can see a theme going on there. And the Ichor Injector to do some mortal wounds in the fight phase. Last but not least, rounded out by 3 Raiders. 1 Raider with a Shock Prow, and all 3 Raiders equipped with Grizzly Trophies to help the Incubi do their thing with the Tormentors and Drazar, which came into play quite a lot throughout the event. Well, there you have it. It's pretty straightforward, not a lot of different units. It's a lot of meat and potatoes, doesn't really shout power. However, it did what it was designed to do very well. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so how does this army work? Well, first and foremost, you have to get your hands on this lovely book called Rift War. So that's where you're going to find all the rules. Yeah. Other than that, the list itself, it was essentially designed to be what is called a defender list at the World Team Championship. It was designed to go into some tough matchups or go into lists that tend to score very well or can do a lot of damage and not crumble. It gives me a lot of resiliency, and it was designed to sort of be able to do okay even into some of the tougher matchups that the rest of the 7 players on the Canadian team would have had issues with. Now, in testing, we did find that the list did exceptionally well into Necrons, averaging a 13 into Necrons, which is really good considering Necrons get all of the secondaries and a lot of the primaries, and even doing well into something like Harlequins and or Sisters of Battle, where I was able to get anywhere from 4 to 6 points, maybe 8 if my opponent made a mistake on average for the differential. So the list itself was designed to be very robust, and this is how it did it. So the first thing is the benefits of a coteries army. The benefits of a coteries army is the entire army, except for Drazar, the Incubi, and the Mandrakes, gets fallback and charge for free, which saves you a command point every time you want to use Treacherous Deception. Every time. And it also impacts the raiders, which is really, really useful because raiders fly over things. And being able to have a raider tagged and then the raider just moving 14 inches over a unit to then charge a unit that was behind or on an objective really comboed well with some of the stratagems that you're able to use in the coteries list. Even though you didn't get the like the transhuman that Prophets of the Flesh get, you have access to some very good durability stratagems and tactics that change the math. So your opponent, who's been playing and practicing against Drukhari armies, will have done the math on how many attacks they need or what they need to do to kill 5 grotesques or to kill 10 or 20 racks or hemoxites or talos. And this can be switched in 2 ways. One with a stratagem, which we'll get to in a second. But the second benefit here is called Driven by Fear, which means that if you target a Coven unit in the Army of Renown that is under 50% strength, their Feel No Pain, the ignore damage, goes from a 5 up to a 4+. Which means as soon as a 20 unit of racks goes to 9 strong, the next unit that attacks them in shooting or combat will now have to deal with a huge markup from a 5 up to a 4 up ignore damage. The mathematics on that is quite substantial. On the off chance, it also works with mortal wounds. However, during mortal wounds, it happens as soon as a unit goes under 50%. So if you have 10 racks and you take 6 mortal wounds, you would go 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then as soon as the 5th one or 6th one dies, then the next mortal wounds that you take in that pool will happen on the 4 up. So it's really cool to kind of save them from a psychic phase in the middle of the psychic phase, which is really neat. So it was designed to change the math. The other thing it has, well, that's the main thing. Now, it gave me access to some really cool relics and warlord traits, which I did not use in this list specifically, but I did test a lot of the stuff that's in this book, mainly because of its ability to mess with my opponent's ability to play the game, which I think is really fun. Okay, now, another big reason that you play this list is the stratagems and how they synergize with the rest of the army. So one of the, you can use some of the pre-game ones, that's fine, but there were like a few that I really used very, very well. Number one, it is the Mercies of the Homunculus. Probably the stratagem I used the most other than reroll wound rolls, which is a basic Drukhari stratagem. As soon as a Coven unit in my army killed another unit in close combat, you could use 1 command point to make their ignore damage a 4+ for the rest of the game. And I'll tell you, a full unit of 5 grotesques that has gone to a 4 up Feel No Pain becomes incredibly hard to shift. Now, early in my testing, I had added a Chronos in the list, which would have then allowed them to use Pain Siphon as well, and then given them full power from Pain and a 4 up Feel No Pain as well, which would have made them very, very durable. However, I took the Chronos out in later testing and just added another Talos, basically is what happened. Visions of Butchery is another one that is incredibly good. In your charge phase, you pick an enemy unit within engagement range of a coteries unit, whether it's a raider, whether it's a Talos, or a unit of racks, and on a 2+, you strip away their objective secured. That alone won me more games than I can count. You could run a raider into 9 Tyrannid warriors, and that raider is going to die. But that raider could roll a 2+, take away objective secured, and the single rack that had survived from the turn before can just put his tippy toe on the objective, and those 9 warriors can do nothing about it. It's fantastic. That stratagem alone was worth me taking this list to the WTC. And it really helps into armies like Necrons that are always all OBSEC, right? And you can take it away from Scorpex or like scarabs or whatever it is you need to take it away from, or you can take it away from something tough. So you don't have to kill things to stop them from scoring. And that can be really useful when you run out of things to kill with, essentially. Brutal Vivisection, which is -1 attack, -1 to wound the next time they attack, can be really useful if you need to change their math again and they go and try and make a smaller unit, maybe more survivable. So having, say, go in, kill a warrior with your grotesques, spend a CP, they're -1 to wound you now, in addition to the 4-up feel no pain and all this other stuff you have. It's all about stacking those layers and those buffs to make each individual unit really tough to get rid of. Last but not least, one of my favorite ones is Protect the Great One. A unit that does any damage to a homunculus. So he has to fail his feel no pain, right? But if he fails a feel no pain and takes 1 damage, you can spend a single command point, and the unit that did the damage is marked for death, essentially. You get Guide and Doom, so reroll hits and wounds. Then that's Vol and Gulliman, reroll hits, reroll wounds, just the best reroll hits and wounds for everything that's core in your army against that unit. And to spice it up, you also get reroll charges, which was awesome when people decided to interrupt and punch my homunculus. And all of a sudden, the rest of my army suddenly got amazing against the unit that had tried to kill my homunculus. Or you charge in with a homunculus and he takes a damage on the way in. And therefore, everybody else that's trying to charge gets reroll charges now. And reroll hits and wounds. And it just saves you so many command points. You just have to get him hurt. And that was a fantastic one to use. And then, of course, Venoms of Agonizing Atrophy, which you can do with an Ossifactor at range or in combat with a poison weapon. And then it reduces the attacks of that unit if you just do a single wound to an enemy unit by 1 for a command point. So you can take a unit like Repenti that have lots of attacks, or you take a unit of Scorpec Destroyers that have lots of attacks, just do a single wound, and they will now have -1, which makes them a lot less effective at clearing your chunky lads, which is exactly what the list was going to do. Now, it played very defensively for the first couple of turns, and a lot of the times your opponent will send something into the middle or try to get an action done on an objective, and that's where it was about the trade game. Like any other Drukhari army, it's all about the trade game, but it was about trading to then beef yourself up to that 4-up feel no pain, to then force your opponent to put more than they expected to kill the unit that they would have killed before without the buffs. And then that snowball would start moving, the rock would start getting pushed over the hill, and then it would gain momentum, and it would be very hard for your opponent to stop you once you had a foothold on the table. Well, there you have it. It's pretty much the list in itself. It's very straightforward and very simple, which is exactly what it's designed to do. Not a lot of moving parts, but more about the technical stuff and when to use the right tools at the right time. But how do you play against it? I don't know. Let's take a look. So how do you deal with this massive Rax? Well, let me tell you, children. No. Take 2. No, just kidding. So this list does have a couple of very bad matchups. And it's one of the reasons it was designed for team events. It's because you can avoid the terrible matchups and your teammates will be able to pick up the slack and play against those. Now, Knights and Chaos Knights tended to be the toughest list for me to play against, just in general. Mainly, I don't have a lot of anti-tank weaponry at range, so I can't really engage them at a distance. And so they would get in, and if the Knight player hit me with everything very quickly or a lot of stuff at once, I didn't have the ability to kill them over time. However, at the WTC, I did find out that if my opponent trickled in the killy Knights, like the Chaos Knights, and misplayed his big Knight, especially the zombie Knight that they could use, I was able to get a 19-1 in that game. And the reason was he didn't kill my Raiders fast enough. And that's a key against Drukhari. Pop the Raiders, get them on the ground, stop their mobility as much as you can. And the second one is use, especially if you're a Chaos Knight player, use your range to your advantage, stay back, mow them down for a couple of turns, and then hit them really hard in combat. But don't give me, or this list, easy ways to get that 4-up feel no pain. Things that do -1 damage into this list really hurt. So when you're looking at bondsman abilities on little mini knights, right, with the -1 damage, or you're looking at chaos knights with the stratagem in close combat, that one knight, even if, can hold up all the grotesques, can hold up the incubi, can do a lot of work, even your big knights, especially if you're a chaos knight player. That can be very hard for this list to shift. So use that to your advantage and make sure you're pressuring your opponent. There is a lot of OBSEC in this list, so one of the best things you can do is just try and kill all of the OBSEC as quickly as possible. All the racks, dead. And then you don't have to worry so much about me taking away your OBSEC, because even one rack can really change the pace of a game by making an 8 go to a 4 or a 12 go to an 8 and just switch the game enough for a loss into a win, for example. Another tough matchup into here, or hard matchups that are winnable but are very, very hard to play, are against Sisters of Battle and against Harlequins. Now, Sisters of Battle are really tough because of the fact that they trade better than Dark Eldar. Before, they used to trade about the same, but now they not only trade well, their secondaries are so much better. So as a Sisters of Battle player, you can get aggressive if you would like. However, your best results would be to stay very defensive and just know that you're going to score more points than me and force me to go and commit to the board faster than, like, at first. And then you can start the trades on your terms. You can send the Zephyrim out, or you can send the Repentia, or you can send the Sacrosanct, or you can send Celestine. And that sort of thing puts me as a Dark Eldar player on the back foot. Now, if you can crack the transports as well, very, very important. And make sure you are wary of the Tormentor Helms and the Fight Loss stuff, because that's going to be a big thing that I'm going to try and use to make sure your attacks don't hit as hard where you need them to hard, as well as, say, an interrupt, right? Because Sisters are still only toughness 3. Which means that even a unit of racks with reroll wound rolls, for example, and can do a lot of damage to like a full Zephyrim unit and kill it even with armor contempt. You're just doing volume, and Sisters of Battle don't like that too much. The Harlequins was also very, very tough. However, if you're playing this list as a Harlequin player, your Fear and Terror, by the way, is something I would take against you all the time, and I would max it out. So read Fear and Terror, it's better than you think. The biggest thing here is use your shuriken cannons to your advantage. Shuriken cannons will destroy grotesques very, very quickly. Because in this list specifically, I don't have the transhuman. Which means if the grotesques are in the open, if you can get 6 to 9 boats worth of shuriken cannons, you will just completely eliminate grotesques. Kill the grotesques first in the Harlequin matchup, and then move on to the Talos, and then move on to the racks. If you can kill the Talos quickly, that'll really help keep your transports and characters and infantry alive in the late game. The Talos are a very key part in that matchup in order to do as much damage as possible. The games I lose into Harlequins, I've tend to have lost my Talos early on in the game because I like using them later. And last but not least, something like Tau. Tau are a hit and miss. I don't have a lot of practice into Tau, but I would normally want to avoid Tau altogether, especially because Tau can just do so much damage that it offsets what my list is designed to do, which is change the math. They can kind of skew the math drastically in the other direction and do a lot of damage. However, if you are playing into it as Tau, crack open the transports. If you can kill all the troops, that's massive. And then just sort of like move, block, or feed little things into the racks, into the grotesques, and stop them from doing a lot of the damage. But if you focus your fire, you should be okay, depending on how the builds are that you've done with your crisis suits. Now, key parts to this list are the racks. The incubi are really good. Drazar, if I were to get too aggressive with Drazar, killing Drazar early is very good. But if he stays alive long, he can be very hard to deal with, especially late game. And of course, the Talos are, more like a sit in the back and screen out the board. But if you can kill those Talos, it really takes a tool away from this list that, even though it doesn't look very important, it helps unify what the list can do in the mid to late part of the game. So killing the Talos is massively important. Other than that, yeah. So the mandrakes are also very important. Kill the mandrakes. It stops a lot of the scoring ability because I'm normally taking something like retrieve Nephilim data. I'm trying to take something like take them alive, or and then either fear and terror, or no prisoners, or like engage on all fronts, or usually behind enemy lines used to be one that I liked a lot more. And killing the mandrakes really stops me from being able to do a lot of those secondaries. So if you can get rid of the mandrakes early, I highly recommend you do. And I had opponents really go out of their way to kill my mandrakes because they knew that they needed to die. But other than that, it's not an unbeatable list. They are very, very tough, but stop their ability to score, lower their mobility, and kill key unit pieces in the army. That should give you enough wiggle room to make sure they don't overwhelm you on the board positioning on the table and stop you from playing the game that you want to play. Because this army can do that. It's something you need to watch out for. So, you're at home and you want to play coteries, do you? But you don't like my list, do you? Well, you're wrong, and you should play this list because it's amazing. No, I'm just kidding. Love you, Manny. So, there are a few things that you can do to change this list. One of the things is like the wiggle room, or the way that I change it the most is whether or not you want to run 15 grotesques or just 10. I think that's mainly where you're going to be getting most of the wiggle room in this list. If you take 5 grotesques out of the list and run 2 units of 5, that gives you a little bit of room to potentially make some of the 10 strong units racks 20s if you like more of a horde. You can also remove raiders, and for every raider you remove, you can add 10 racks to a unit, which would then allow you to bring larger units of racks if you so wish. And then you could either go for the 3 units of incubi, right? So you could twig, if you took a unit of grotesques out, you'd probably want to put in 3 units of incubi so you have more, or maybe another unit of mandrakes if you like having multiple units that can fly around. I didn't take advantage of the fast attack slot, but maybe some Scourge would give you some additional movement and ability to have shredders to deal with lots of infantry if that's in your local meta. Or do the blasters thing, or the heat lances if you're feeling very dangerous and feel like you can hit with them. So, be my guest. But the biggest thing here would be 5 or 15 grotesques. Do you want smaller units of racks like I've built into this list, or larger blocks of racks, depending on what your playstyle is? And if you don't like the 3 raiders, maybe take 2 raiders and 1 or 2 venoms. But I think the transports really add a lot to this list, but you can kind of mix and match. Now you could also do the Chronos thing. Take the Talos out, put a Chronos in for some Pain Siphon, and a Pain Siphon for the probe. You can do the Spirit Probe to give reroll 1s to wound. So then in combination with the reroll 1s to hit from the homunculus, then you have reroll 1s to wound from the probe, and that'll give you some, it'll help you save on the command points that you then want to use more on other things, like taking away OBSEC or rerolling wound rolls and things like that. Overall, it has some room and some flexibility. And then the last change I would potentially make, so you might not need Drazar. Take him out, maybe do Uri and Rakarth to make sure all your racks are strength 4, right? And then lower the one homunculus to not a master. And like that, you can wound tanks on 5s with your racks instead of having to use their strength 3, right? Which is on 6s. And that can change the math. But it's all about your playstyle. So let me know with a comment down below. I'm going to be reading them and answering them for this video. So if you have any comments, any questions, I'll make sure I answer yours. But I hope you enjoyed a deep dive into the Coven of the Drukhari.
So that was a roster review of Skari's World Team Championships Homunculus Coven Coteries list that he took for Team Canada at the World Team Champs, and he performed really, really well with it. So I hope you guys loved that breakdown. I mean, he was there to talk you through it himself, knows a lot more about Drukhari than I do. I learned a lot from this video, hope you guys did. And as Skari said, let him know in the comments if you have any suggestions, or if there are any questions that you have that you want to ask about how key elements of it worked, and he will be answering them. And also guys, please go and check out his channel. His Patreon link is down below, so go and check it out, and you can find all of his other links to his social media if you would like to follow any of them on his Patreon. And if you haven't already guys, please hit that subscribe button, notifications bell in the corner over there, so you know each time I release one of these videos, and give me a like to let me know that you're enjoying these roster reviews, and we'll get a lot more of them in. See you later guys, take care. live stream Warhammer 40k games, meta-analysis, tournament reports. Hi guys, I'm Manny. I am one of the co-founders of Glasshammer Gaming. I'm one of the current top 5 ranked ITC players in the world, and I play for my international team, Team England, and we are the current reigning world champions. So we started Glasshammer Gaming at the start because we play a very high level, and we realized that a lot of content creators online were more narrative and not really focused on the competitive aspect of the game, and we thought it'd be really cool if we made battle reports, live streams and tactics videos to help players improve in their competitive game, and also for people who are looking to start getting into competitive play, help them along the way and give them some tips. We also have an elite service, and if you join up, you get more in-depth meta-analysis, competitive tournament reports, and even bigger discounts on our store, which are incredible in the first place, and you're basically getting some of the best discounts in the world. If you join up, you also get access to our Discord server, where there are lots of like-minded people who also want to be very competitive and play to the best of their ability, and you'll be added in there with all of them. There are different channels for every army, every faction, so you can talk to other players who play the same armies as you and improve together.